Hi, I'm AJ Hogue of EffortlessEnglishClub.com. This video, let's talk more about English presentations, giving a public speech in English. Could be a business meeting, it might be a speech in front of a class, at a conference, a job interview. Basically, in a situation that makes you very nervous, very stressful. Now, in a previous video, I talked about the problem you have in this situation. It's fear, it's nervousness. It's not really your English that's the problem, right? It's the fear that comes up. So let's talk about that fear more and what actually happens. See, when you're at home practicing your speech, you're quite calm, right? Of course, you're not standing in front of a group of people. You might be a little nervous if you think about what you're going to do in the future, but generally you're relaxed. And so you practice your speech, and usually it's fine, right? Especially if you practice it a lot. If you practice it every day and you really make sure it's organized and it's a good speech, well, then when you're practicing at home, everything goes well. You think, good, this is going to be a good presentation. But then the real day arrives, and you're there, and there are all those people, and you're 5 minutes away, 4 minutes away, 3 minutes away. Oh, and then what happens? Then all of that nervousness and fear take over, and then you become terrified, and then your speech is terrible. You get up there, and your voice is weird, and you can't remember anything, and it's a disaster. It's terrible, right? So what actually is happening in that situation? What's happening is what it's called, it's just a classic adrenal response or adrenaline response. Adrenaline is a chemical in your body. It comes from your adrenal glands. They're on top of your kidneys. And basically, when you're in a high-stress situation, something that could be excitement or that could be fear, but basically a high-stress situation, your brain thinks there's danger. So your body needs to prepare for it. So your body releases adrenaline into your body, into your blood. And it goes all through your body, goes to your heart, goes to your lungs, where you breathe, goes to your brain. And then certain things happen that you can't control at this point. You can't control these things. Number one, your heart starts beating faster. Boom, 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 right? You start breathing faster. Right? So we know that these things, right? But there are a few other things that happen because of adrenaline. One thing is that your vision changes. Have you noticed this? You get what's called tunnel vision. So in a normal situation, when you're just looking, you can kind of see off to your sides very easily. You can see off to the sides. You kind of see everything. But when adrenaline is in your system, you're kind of narrow. So now you don't really see the things to the side so much. You just focus in on a smaller area directly in front of you. We call this tunnel vision. This happens when you have adrenaline. It happens before a speech when you're really nervous and afraid. So suddenly now you're only just seeing straight ahead. You're not really noticing what's happening to the side. Another thing that happens, the same thing happens with your ears, where you kind of stop hearing everything that's around you, right? It's like suddenly sounds aren't picked up anymore. So it's kind of this dull sound, like you're not really hearing things as clearly anymore. And instead, you're hearing your own thoughts a lot louder. That's another thing that happens with adrenaline. Another thing that happens is it's called time distortion. So that your how you see time or how you feel time changes, right? This can happen in a couple different ways. One way is that everything seems to go much more slowly. This is usually what happens. So even though you might give a speech, it's only 1 minute or 2 minutes. When you're all afraid, the adrenaline's in your body, that minute or 2 minutes can seem so long. It feels like you're up there for an hour, when in fact it's just, boom, it's really fast. And then the final thing, and this is really important, that happens is that your, what we call this higher thinking kind of stops, or at least slows down, becomes less efficient. So anything that's complicated, for example, remembering a speech and remembering how it's organized, and certainly if you tried to memorize it word for word, all of that whoosh is gone when you have a lot of adrenaline in your body. When you have adrenaline in your body, your unconscious is more in control, your kind of more primitive mind. Because what's happening is your body is telling your brain that you need to run away because there's danger, or you need to fight. I mean, this is what happened, hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago. When adrenaline came into our body, it's because there's a danger, which means we have to run, or we have to fight, right? So all of our high thinking and, intellect and rational thinking and very complicated skills, they're gone. This happens in fighting, in martial arts too, where a martial artist, someone who knows karate or something, they know all these complicated skills, but if they're attacked on the street, they can't use them. They forget all these complicated skills because the adrenaline is in their body so much, they forget all of this. Well, when you give a speech, of course, this can be a disaster because you have all the adrenaline, so now that part of your brain kind of turns off. You can't remember all that stuff you practiced. Then you start thinking, oh my God, I can't remember, what am I supposed to say? You remember little pieces, but when you give the presentation, it's not what you practiced. It's certainly not as good. So that's what happens. There's actually physical things happening in your body, and these cause certain mental things to happen. So the point is, think about when you're practicing. If you're practicing at home and you're always really calm, you're relaxed, you're sitting back, practicing your speech. But then in the real situation, you have a lot of adrenaline in your body, causing all these changes. Well, that's a problem because the real event is nothing like the practice. So we'll talk about this more in a future video, but one key to handling this stress and nervousness and fear is that you must practice with adrenaline in your body. You have to get that adrenaline in your body and then practice your speech several days and even weeks before the real event. Then you get used to that adrenaline, and then you can start actually thinking more clearly and better when the real day comes. So we'll talk more about how to do this in a future video. Just remember, you've got to learn how to handle this fear, this adrenaline. It's a physical thing happening, and you've got to practice with it. You can't just do it on the day. It's something you must practice, and we'll talk about that more in the future. I'm AJ Hogue of EffortlessEnglishClub.com.